So look at page 660 a second, okay? I'm going to read a couple of verses, then we're going to talk about it, okay? The reason why I want to talk about this today and why this is on my mind is that we are coming to Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur time. It is a very heavy time, and in reality, if you look at it, and I think I mentioned this last time, we do know that there's some truth to astrological systems. I say most of them are charlatans and fruitcakes, most of them. But the truth is there is a real basis for it. There's actually a book called Malach Raziel, a Kabbalistic book that's written by the first human being, by Adam. And if you open that book, you will see a diagram of the constellations and of the 12 months of the year, and they are essentially most of what we know today as far as the months. Now again, in English the months go from the 22nd or whatever it is. In the Hebrew it's every month. Every month has a certain energy that's lined up to the 12 tribes. We talked about last time, I showed you last time how every three-dimensional object has what's called alachsonim, has 12 side points. If you count the three-dimensional object, right, it has 6 sides. That's the 6 days of the week. The object itself is Shabbos, it's the Sabbath. Okay? Everything in the physical world is on a cycle of 7. It has 6 is the expansion, right, in the three-dimensional reality. That's going to be 6. 7th is the item itself. In Jewish thinking, 8 means supernatural. That's why the Brit Milah, the circumcision, is on the 8th day. Right? Because it represents the idea of beyond the 7. But when you have this thing in the physical world, the full expansion of it, if you count it, it's going to be these extensions. So there's going to be 4 here, 4 here, and 4 here. There's 12 alachsonim, 12 lines of expansion in any three-dimensional object. You see that? Does that make sense? You see that? That's the 12 tribes. And every tribe has therefore its energy, its expansion to the world, paralleling the 12 months of the year. So if you were to guess, what would be the astrological sign of the month of Tishrei, the month we're about to come into? Right? Last time I talked to you about this month we're in is Virgo, Virgin. We're starting a brand new relationship with God. We're starting again. But what is going to be the month that's going to be heralded in by Rosh Hashanah, by the New Year and the Day of Judgment? What's the sign and what's the symbol? I don't know. Libra. I'm a Libra. Now Libras have a problem sometimes. When I go into the supermarket to buy bread, it takes me hours. Well, this one's fortified with 8 essential vitamins. Ooh, but this one has extra added iron. I can't weigh them out. It's so hard. The Libras weigh things out all the time. So the month is called the month of scales. Well, that's not an accident. It is the holiday and the period of scales, of judgment. Judgment. And, I mean, the world is about to pop. I mean, the energy right now is very, very, very heavy, very, very powerful. These are the 2 polar months of the calendar. There is the spring, which is the month of Passover, freedom. That's called the month that is based on kindness. This month is already the time of judgment. 6 months later, from Passover time to what's called Sukkot, and this whole entire month, this is the month that's called the month of judgment, and that's the scales. And judgment's a very, very powerful thing. It's a very frightening thing, okay? In one sense, judgment is good because it forces you to get your act together, right? If everything is like, hey, let it go, I'll teach you how to play tennis, here's what we do. I hit it to you, and it can bounce 10 times on your side, doesn't really matter. And you can hit it into wherever you want, doesn't matter. It's all good. You will never learn how to play tennis, right? Because there's no rules, there's no structure, there's no judgment, there's no din. Din means that the more the microscope goes on you, the more you hopefully don't get paralyzed by it, but you get motivated by it, and you work out exactly to do things right. If you're ever in that zone where, you're feeling the intensity of it, and it's like everything you're doing is being watched, but you're trying to do it right, that means that you're trying to be successful in din, in judgment. And Rosh Hashanah is when the judgment really starts, the day of judgment. And so I want to try to kind of reveal a secret tonight, how we can be successful in judgment. Because it's a scary thing. Because being judged, I don't know if I'm so great, if I did so well. So how do we do that? How do we deal with that? How do we be successful in judgment? What is going to be the way to sort of do it? Because if I'm going to try to do it just by being as great as I can be, it's a little bit rough. Is there a secret on how to do it? I'll tell you this, there's a secret here. And it's really relevant, and it can be misunderstood with what's going on in the world now, so we kind of have to see it in that context also. Okay? So I want to read some verses from the Torah together with you. These verses you have heard. These verses are very, very fundamental verses. Okay? And you've heard them, you've thought about them, and they are the basis of a lot of things. We're going to see how it's the basis of hopefully dealing with Rosh Hashanah well. So it's on page 660. 661. It says, I'm going to start from verse 17. You shall not hate your brother in your heart. Now what does that mean? Does that mean, well, don't hate him in your heart, as long as you hate him to his face, then it's okay? Is that what it means? It's a little weird. What do you mean, don't hate him in your heart? I can hate him otherwise. It's weird. Next part of the verse says, you shall reprove your fellow and do not bear a sin because of him. Okay, so what does it mean? What does it mean, don't hate your fellow in your heart? What it means is that this is, this verse is especially applicable to living in the South. Because when someone says, bless her heart, that means drop dead. That's what it really means. Translation, you have like little subtitles there, In English, that means drop dead. So bless your heart doesn't mean bless your heart. Okay, if you just got to the South, that's not what it means. It doesn't mean that at all. So that's really called don't hate your friend in your heart. You see, what happens is that of course if you hate your friend, overtly, that's terrible. But the thing is that hating your heart means is that you are not trying to work things out. You're keeping it inside of you, this hatred, and you're justifying. You're saying, listen, I got a good reason. Bless her heart, this is what she does, bless her heart. No, that's not good. So of course you can't hate someone overtly, but if you did what the verse says and you rebuke them, you said, listen, you hurt my feelings when you did this thing. I want to work it out with you. But you've talked, you try to work it out, at least you have been honest. And if the person did do something against you, then they have to fix it up. But if you don't tell them, you don't try to work it out, they don't know they did something wrong. And you're keeping it inside of yourself. That's not good. That's bad. Okay? Now let's go on. It says then afterwards, go and rebuke your friend and don't have a sin against him. Now the next verse says, Lo tikom lo titor, which means do not take revenge, do not bear a grudge against the members of your people. You shall love your fellow as yourself. I am Hashem. Here we go. That's the big verse. Everyone knows that. Very, very hard to do. How do you love someone like yourself? It's not possible. Sorry. It's not really possible. It's not humanly possible. You can love someone like yourself. If there's a choice of some stranger getting killed or you getting killed, you have a choice. You can say, after you. So it doesn't work that way. So what does it mean? So there's a lot of different things that commentaries talk about. The simplest level. So this is not my main theme tonight, but we can talk about the mystical ramifications of it in the future. But the simple level is that do you wish good for other people, or do you not wish good for other people? In other words, yes, if it's the love you never like yourself, and you have $1 million in the bank, someone comes over and says, listen, you love me like yourself? You say, Sure. It says it right here in the book. Okay, so give me 500,000. Right? Like myself, half and half. No, you don't have to do that. But what you do is you should wish them just like you have what you have, you wish they should have it also. That's already just bad traits. When a person says, I have something good, but I like the idea that I'm a little bit ahead of everybody else, that's not loving your neighbor like yourself. You're not wishing the best for them. You are wishing that you still are a little bit higher than they are. That's not good. Okay? And I'm not going to talk about it now but it's a fantastic topic here. It says not to bear a grudge and not to take revenge. Those are very, very great and deep commandments. Not easy to do. A lot of explanations about it. I'll say one which is just maybe the most simple. It's just not a good trait. A person needs to rise above certain things. Okay? Now the verses here talk about how to interact with people. Now, I think that there's a problem with understanding this. Let's be honest with each other. Do you think you should love everyone? Is there anyone you shouldn't love? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hard to do.
What?
It's very hard to do.
Yeah, very hard to do. And the truth is, there's a lot of people you shouldn't love. There are people who are hate mongers, and that's not going to go. You can maybe say, okay, I see the greatness in them, I see a beautiful thing in them, but their ways are not good. That you could do. But the reality is that what happens in the world today is there's a lot of conflict between groups that are saying a lot of negative things, and I want to talk about that for 1 second, because I think that there's a concept that I find very disturbing that's going on today in the world. You need to understand this. Everybody here will know that if we talk about Nazis, neo-Nazis, everyone says, we hate these guys, they're terrible. Okay, great, that's obvious. Because what's their theme? Their theme is that we hate anyone that's different than us. That's very vile, that's obviously. What's happened is in the world, a very fascinating thing. There's sort of a new movement that's developing, which is, I hate anyone who thinks differently than I do. And that's a little problematic, you see. And you know what's especially problematic? As we, as America, as a country, and as societies develop humanistic value systems, that problem gets much, much greater. Because what happens right now? If you look at a lot of the things that are common wisdom today in the world, commonly accepted things, you will find that 20 years ago, nobody believed those things. Nobody. for that. So, wait a minute. So certain things now have become common belief. And these things, if you disagree with those things, you're in a lot of trouble today. Put the signs that will go do. See, one group could kill for no reason. But what scares me is another group that can kill for a reason. And once that self-righteous determination of what I think is good and I think is right comes in the world, that's a problem. The Nazis outlawed what's called shchita. The Jews have a way where we slaughter the animal that actually, if you look at scientifically, I've seen it documented, is actually the most humane way to kill the animal. Yes, he feels the least pain. It's a very sharp knife. He feels the least pain. But the Nazis, who wanted to create a view of the rights of animals, felt it was cruel. Oh my gosh. So now, not only if you disagreed with their view was it illegal, it was actually criminal. And it was actually morally reprehensible. You disagree with those. So right now in the world, we're having a problem. And this is why I really want to qualify this. There are people who are espousing certain things, and I want to talk to you about making peace with people and how that's important for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And you're going to have to figure out who is in your group, right? When we talk about the circles, the Jewish people, it's very important to understand, and Roman and I talk about this very, very often. The Jewish people, as far as teaching the world about the 7 Noahide laws, became somewhat insular over many years. Okay? Everyone have any idea why that might have been? Because we were getting killed. Because there wasn't much of an audience that was listening. It was like kind of hard to talk. Like when you're being persecuted and running away. So what happened is that the Jews then, didn't, and then it became much more insular, and that became a way of life. So much so that I once saw in a response, I saw one great rabbi discussing it. And he was saying, well, how come we're not being a light on today's and teaching people about the Torah, teaching people about morality? And this one great rabbi wanted to respond something like, well, we were exempted by the fact that what's happened in history. Well, all right, maybe yes, maybe no, but right now, hopefully things are changing. And hopefully the world will, I know there are people in the world who are looking for morality and righteousness in all nations of the world. You gotta create what's called a group of people who are looking to live a moral life. Do you have to go and do the things I'm going to talk to you about today to someone who's a barbarian, wants to kill you? No. You can get any philosophical thing you want to say about yes, we hope that they change their ways, but practically, the things we're going to talk about today, you need to be careful with someone who's not in a vision of acting properly and morally, because that's just an illusion, right? If you're going to go and people have Nazi ideals, you can't go and sit and have a conversation about with terrorists. Because a terrorist view is a terrorist view, and it's a very different view than everyone sitting in this room, hopefully anyone listening to this, who wants to strive to live a moral and righteous life. Okay? So that's the first we know who we're talking about. Now, if we talk about now people within our family circle, our friends, the people that you can influence to live a moral life, this is where I'm talking about with some of these traits that we're going to mention today. And this is what comes to the idea of Rosh Hashanah. There's an amazing concept. The concept is however you act in the world, that's the way God reflects the world back to you. Okay? That is a teaching in Kabbalistic writings, based on the verse of the Psalms. And so if you act a certain way, if you're a positive person, then very often you find everyone's pretty nice. If you're a complaining person, why is everyone always complaining? Because you're always complaining. That's why they're complaining. Because your whole world is complaining. All you do is you're the complaint. Like wearing a sign on your head. I'm the complaint department. I complain to others. Come complain to me. Everything's fetchy and whiny. That's the way it is. So what happens if you have situations in your family dynamics, in your friend circle, that you feel someone has hurt you? What do? Well, one thing we saw is you should probably go and talk to them and not say, bless your heart. You should probably go and talk to them and try to find a way to communicate with them. But when is the point where you can go and say, you know what, I'm going to let it go a little bit. I'm going to let it go. See, if you could say that for the people that you determine you could do that with, again, some people are not functioning that way. But for those that you could say, take an approach in life where you're able to forego certain things. It's called being mavir al amidos. A person who has the ability to say, I really could stand on ceremony here and say I'm right and I deserve this. But you know what? I'm gonna learn to let things go with people, and not supposed to be omid did not stand on what I'm 100% right. Okay. Now again, with certain things, you got to stand and be 100% right. You're dealing with people that are terrorists and otherwise. You got to say this is wrong. But when you deal with your friends and interactions, in most interactions you will find there is another side to the story, believe it or not. So how come we don't feel that way? Well, why don't we feel that? And the answer is because what naturally people do is they start to go and to put themselves and their own honor in a high place, and they're not able to get off of that high horse. And so therefore, when we're coming into this time of Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, time of judgment, God says, you know what the best way for me to let things go and be over El Pesha and not deal with you for every negative thing in that certain type of demanding way, is when you demonstrate that philosophy to others. Because if you demonstrate that philosophy to others, it's not like God's giving you a buy, but you are actually that person. You are a person who functions that way. You are a person who naturally is incorporating a godly trait. Okay, it's one of the 13 attributes we talk about God's compassion, and that's one of them. So that is part of the key that we need right now. And I think that the reason why I'm saying this is both this is the time of judgment, and you gotta try to fix up what we gotta fix up. Us and God, us and people. Okay, someone that you hurt or someone that hurt you and you're holding a grudge against them, you gotta find first a way to say, you know what? I don't have a monopoly on truth so much. Maybe it's some crazy people I do, but the people in your circle, there's probably another side to the story. And the first thing you need to do is you need to communicate it and not say bless your heart, you talk about it. And then you need to find a way that even if you believe you're right, to go to a higher level of existence and saying, I'm going to be a person who's going to be able to not think that I have all the answers. And when you function that way, that becomes the response. And I think that I'm thinking about the situation right now in the world. And it really is a strong dichotomy where on one hand there needs to be standing up for what's right and against what's wrong, and there's a lot of stuff that's wrong that's being propagated. And then there's a circle. It's creating a circle of people who interact and relate to each other in a proper way. And you gotta understand this. It's like sometimes you think about, well, what could I do to change the world? Well, honestly, it's not a bad thing to go and to go here and go there and go there. But really, since we believe that God runs the world, the changes that we need to make are in our own circle. That's where it starts. It's concentric circles. You start with your place, your friends, your family, your contacts. That's where you start with. When you create peace and you create this ability to let go on certain things in your circle, that's going to create a ripple effect that's going to be sent throughout the world. That's the way you're going to get these guys on the two sides of this fence. They're never dropping their arms and coming to hug each other. That's not happening. And that ain't going to happen. But what happens is that if we could start that in our circle, then that becomes the judgment that we get, and then from that point it goes out and affects everyone else in the world. Okay? Questions, comments, thoughts on what we said so far tonight?